Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now today we're going to be looking at mainly shadows with this pretty little window scene. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. So today I want to focus on painting shadows. Now I can remember several years ago watching a tutorial. It might have been an old VHS tape, I can't remember. But I do remember the artist saying clearly, remember, shadows are always grey. And I thought to myself, after picking my jaw up off the floor, no they're not. Of course shadows can be grey, but they're not always grey. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about using local colour in your shadows. So let me explain. So here's an old sketch which I recently found. It's something I did en plein air a few years back on holiday in France. It's just a quick idea I was going to use for a finished painting, which I never got round to doing. Now I remember the shadow on the side of the barn had a slight purplish feel to it, so I really exaggerated the colour to give an extra touch of drama and atmosphere. It's just something that can work really well by adding blue or purple into your shadows, just to take it away from being too literal. So now what I want to talk about is local colour, which basically means the actual colour of an object without any highlights or shadows. So in the case of this tomato, the real colour of it will be mainly in the centre section here, with a lighter version of the same colour on the highlight side and a darker version on its shadow side. So in this demonstration, I'm starting by simply painting a blue-grey shadow across the bank and path. And this can work reasonably well, especially if you make sure the wash is transparent enough to show the original colour through. Now shadows are also a great way of showing the lie of the land. Now in this demonstration, I'm using the local colour, but a darker version to create the shadow, because that is really what a shadow is, simply a darker version of the same colour rather than just painting grey on top. So as you can see in the grass banks, I'm painting a dark green, and on the path a brownish colour for its shadow, and then just connecting them up. And for me, this is much more a natural way of painting a shadow, and I hope you agree it looks nicer than the version on the left. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Today's materials are as follows. My paper is some Winsor & Newton Professional 300-pound rough texture. My paints are normal 3 primaries, cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow, some cadmium orange, yellow ochre, Payne's grey, dioxazine purple, cerulean blue, and some burnt umber. 4 brushes, number 12 and number 6 round, a 3/4 inch flat, and of course my trusty number 3 rigger. So no reference photo today, as this is just made up, but a drawing template is available free of charge from my website, link below in the description. So to start with, my number 12 brush, I'm part wetting the surrounding wall with just clean water, and then just throwing in some yellow ochre. Here a touch of burnt umber, and a few granules of salt. Next a few blobs of clean water to form a few back runs. And now randomly splatting in some burnt umber. And the idea is to create a nice old textured wall. So I'm putting in this big black arrow just to remind me of the direction of light. You can also see, now it's dried, the lovely textures created by the salt and those blobs of water. So I'm painting the flowers next because I want to make sure they go down on clean white paper to get them as bright as possible. And here for this rose bush, I'm just using some permanent magenta. but you can paint your flowers whatever colour you like. And here I'm using some dioxidine purple for this lobelia. I don't know, is that a thing? And here some cadmium yellow for these yellow flowers. Now I'm covering all my flowers in masking fluid. Now you might think that this is the odd way around to do it, but I prefer to paint my flower shapes first with a brush and then mask out. And you don't have to be really accurate with it, because if you pick up a few white bits, it all adds to that nice loose approach which I like. Next in with a 50-50 mix of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue. I'm also adding in some bluer tones by mixing in some cerulean blue, dropping in blobs of clean water to keep things moving, and of course some random splattering. Here I'm using my trusty rigger and a mix of burnt umber and cobalt blue, with some strokes going in wet in wet. And now for the foliage, a much more yellowy green, and then dropping in wet a darker green value, mostly under each rose. And remember, I've got the masking fluid on to protect the colour. And I'm painting these plants in exactly the same way. Now for these lovely old wooden shutters, and I'm using some cerulean blue, but you could use any bright blue, and I'm still using my number 12 brush. So I'm dropping in here a little cadmium orange, which makes it look a little bit greenish, but it's just to make the paint look a little worn and stained. Now for the pot, and I'm getting a sort of an earthy terracotta colour with a mix of cadmium orange and burnt umber. Now for a highlight by lifting out the colour and putting in a nice dark shadow with some burnt umber. And exactly the same for this pot. Now with the wooden end of my brush, I'm scoring into the wash to give this sort of wicker effect. Now for some watery burnt umber for these shadows, and as I mentioned before, this is using the local colour to create these harmonious shadows. Now as it's a glorious summer's day, the shadow will be very strong here, so I'm using a nice dark mix of burnt umber and cobalt blue. And as you can see, it really helps to bring out the window ledge. So now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break, and as the sun is shining, a lovely refreshing gin and tonic. You just can't beat it. Next, with a very dark bluish green, a few leaf details. And this number 12 brush shape is perfect for getting those little leaf shapes with just one simple stroke. Little touch of splattering, and of course dab out with a tissue for any dots that look too prominent. Now for the shadows on the windows, and I'm using a very watery Payne's grey. Just be aware of where the light source is coming from. And here, for no apparent reason, I'm giving the pot a red stripe. So again here, I'm using what I called the local colour for the shadows on the shutters. And what I did was just add a touch of Payne's grey and a little bit of alizarin crimson into my cerulean blue. Now with my rigger and some Payne's Grey for some finer details, but don't overwork it. Just a few dabs and dashes here and there. Back to the window, and remember, less is always more. Time now to remove the masking fluid, as it's beginning to get on my nerves as it keeps sticking to my hand. A bit of Payne's Grey here for these hinges. Okay, so I think I want to get this shadow a little stronger to give more contrast. So I'm re-wetting with clean water, then dropping in that dark mix of burnt umber and Payne's Grey. Now for the inside of the window, and a nice darkish Payne's Grey. And I'm adding in some cerulean blue just to add a little bit of interest. Perhaps it's a reflection from the sky or something going on inside, who knows. And I'm not tempted to use a smaller brush because I like that little bit of wobbly line. And here nice and dark to get a lovely high contrast with the flower. Now I'm just trying to get a little texture into the wood because we don't want these to look like UPVC plastic windows. Now with some burnt umber again and a few more shadows on the window ledge. And let's get some more texture into the wall. Next, a damp tissue for that smudging effect, just to soften and blend. Oops, nearly forgot the bracket for the hanging basket. And this is just some burnt umber again. And how about a few little cracks? And now for a few final details on the roses, and here I'm just using my number 6 brush. Doing exactly the same with corresponding colours on the rest of the plants. Next, with a white pastel pencil, a few little highlights on the shutters. And here with a soft white pastel, just to suggest a few reflections in the windows. And here I'm dragging the pastel on its side around the edges just to create a bit more of a plaster texture. And finally, the magic scalpel, just to scratch in a few white highlights on the flowers. Always in danger of overworking it, let's call it a day, as I feel another gin and tonic is calling. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. Coming up now are some paintings from the Facebook group. Now, Margot set a challenge with a very similar subject to the one we painted today. Here's the reference photo, and here are some paintings just picked at random for you to enjoy. So, please don't forget to do all the normals, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and of course I look forward to seeing you all again next week for Watercolour Wednesdays. Bye for now.